right, we are back.
We are back. Wow, we have had some great music this episode.
But we're going to get into, we finally finished up a couple weeks ago. We actually just not getting around to doing the review for this. Is Obi-Wan for Disney Plus, the series. And it's been a pretty popular series. Look, out of the three now that have come out for Star Wars, The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, and now this, if I had to rank them, I think The Mandalorian is still 1. This would be 2, and then Book of Boba Fett would be 3.
I think this is 1 for me, and The Mandalorian 2, and Boba Fett 3. Boba Fett was the biggest disappointment. I hate to say that, and I'm sorry for all you I've been a Star Wars fan since I was out of the womb. There's a picture of me at 3 years old wearing a Return of the Jedi t-shirt. I love Star Wars, so the whole idea of a Boba Fett series, and maybe I'll watch it again, but I seriously cannot remember one thing from that series. That's how unforgettable it was. Whereas this series, the Obi-Wan series, I don't know, maybe I just enjoy the actors more, because I'm a big...
Oh, and this one, well...
Yeah, I'm a big Ewan McGregor fan, number one.
Yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia with this. I mean, there's nostalgia with all of them in a way, because Mandalorian, even though the Mandalorian's like a new character, you have the Baby Yoda, which is a reference, of course,
to everybody
Yoda.
Loves Baby Yoda.
Of course, Book of Boba Fett, we always wanted the Boba Fett solo film.
I know.
So it's still a bit of work, but towards the end of Boba Fett, the series, they brought in the Mandalorian to be a part of that. That's when the series picked up. So they got a lot of work to do with that one. Now, there's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, Obi-Wan's like the best shit ever. Those fights at the end are like epic." And I'm like, is it really? And I don't want to diss Obi-Wan because I do like it.
Oh, let me tell you, the most epic fight was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul.
Yeah.
And that was was...
There's nothing ever going to beat that.
Nothing is ever going to beat that fight. And it's not the best movie, but that fight was spectacular.
Yeah. And it's not to take anything away from the Vader Obi-Wan fight in the series. It's just that...
Or the Vader Obi-Wan fight in Star Wars, the first Star Wars.
That was like one...
But...
much limited. Vader just pretty much...
But Obi-Wan wanted to die.
Right,
he did that
on
purpose.
To take his next step.
And this is really, I was reading an article about that and about the Obi-Wan series and kind of how they tied it together. And, because Obi-Wan the Obi-Wan series happens before Star Wars.
Right.
And they were saying in that scene in Star Wars where Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight and then Obi-Wan dies, the last thing that he actually sees is Luke and Leia reunited. So I think whoever's writing these scripts for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, it has to be a fan of Star Wars because they're taking that into consideration as well. Because when you saw Star Wars back in the 70s and early 80s, or whenever you saw Star Wars, you're really kind of, that's all you get. That's all you got. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, when you got the new Star Wars prequel movies, that's all you got. But then there's still these gaps in time, and that's what Obi-Wan is kind of filling in. After episode 3, before episode 4. And I really kind of felt, emotional, because when that I forgot who the author was of this article, said, in episode 4, the last thing that Obi-Wan saw was Luke and Leia getting together. It was really heartfelt.
We felt that a lot throughout this series because, as you said, there's an article I'm going to go through with you, and we're going to agree or disagree. But the first thing is first. The plot synopsis of Obi-Wan Kenobi is simply this: Following Revenge of the Sith, after Obi-Wan has defeated Vader for the first time, a young Vader, he goes into seclusion, of course. He split up the two kids. Princess Leia, who's played by Vivian Lara Blair, the young girl, Neko and I agree, she's a perfect representation of Leia. She looks like baby Carrie Fisher. Yeah, it's so uncanny. And she did a really, really good job with that. So Obi-Wan is in seclusion, and I think he is on Tatooine. I think it's where he's working. He's just in a different part of it. Mm-hmm. And his goal really here is he's kind of like overlooking Luke, even though he's not really that involved with him. He's watching him and the uncle and everything else. But he's not used his power, so he doesn't want to tip off these other Vader and other beings. I forget what they call it. It's like a trifecta of... what the fuck are they? Mercenaries? Yes, thank you. Who are out searching for Jedi. They're trying to rid them of the rest of them. Like, so after Vader kills destroys the Jedi Temple and everything, they are now out, as the Empire is out there trying to eradicate all the Jedi in total. But obviously there's one particular Inquisitor we'll get to who has her heart set on finding Obi-Wan. So Obi-Wan not using his powers, he really kind of forgets how to do it. Like, it's almost like it just... He'd
been suppressing it for so long. Right. Like, he didn't want... Because the Force is around. It's nature. It's everywhere. So he was really trying not to engage in the Force, because if you do engage, then anyone else who engages in the Force can find you. So he was trying to just be Ben.
Yeah, and this is the great thing about McGregor, is that he's portraying a character who's dealing with guilt for not only being wrong about Anakin, but
killing his best friend.
That, plus everything that went on with the Jedi Temple and the betrayal. Basically, he's dealing with all this. He thinks Vader's dead at this point early on. It isn't until 2 or 3 episodes in when he is informed that Vader is quite alive, and he has like this real fear on his face. Like, it's like, oh shit, So obviously throughout this, he's got, Luke really doesn't become a focal point, because Leia has become this other focal point where she's actually being kidnapped and is sort of like being used as a pawn to try to draw out Obi-Wan, which it works.
Because they knew that Obi-Wan was close to her adoptive parents.
Right. So the whole series deals with it, and of course there's some moments where Obi-Wan is facing Vader, and of course the finale where they actually fight again, which is great about seeing Hayden Christensen come back, because he gets to reprise the role. But the thing about Vader in this series is that, unlike the movies that we'd always seen him in, this is a very young and angry Vader. So he's still feeling the effects of his...
And he's still, really...
Padme dying and, not knowing about the kids part, but, he's just angry about everything. So you're seeing what... He's just, destroying everybody.
he's working on the dark side.
So there's this article on Looper.com. It's called The 6 Best and 6 Worst Things About Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we're going to go through...
Okay.
Now, they alternate between best and worst, so we'll start with the first best, which is Ewan McGregor.
That is the best thing about it.
We agree he is the best thing about the series, because he played it really well in the prequel movies, and he did a good job in this series here. So, and he did a good job of conveying the feelings and the... what was the word I'm looking for? The emotions that he's dealing with, the toll that has been on him.
Like the guilt and the anger and the fear.
Right, so he does a very good job throughout the series. So the first worst is too much filler.
There wasn't a lot of filler, I didn't think, because you know how I am about filler. There were a couple of episodes that I said, I can't believe how short they were. So what filler are they talking about?
So in their description, they say Obi-Wan Kenobi is only 6 episodes long, and they all fall under an hour. Yet the show spends a big chunk of time on storylines that feel inescapably like filler. This is most egregious in Episode 4, which consists almost entirely of Tala, Idura Varma, and Obi-Wan's mission to rescue Leia from the Fortress Inquisitress. On paper, it's a fun idea for an episode. The base aquatic location makes for a cool escape sequence as the tunnels flood, and there's definite appeal in showing a little of the Inquisitors day-to-day. So I guess they feel like some of those side things, even though I think they have to play a part, you have to have them in there because otherwise it won't make sense. But we get to another point later with this. So the problem is that everything that happens in Episode 4 is regurgitation. Obi-Wan rescues Leia, which he already did in Episode 2. He gets surprise help from some Jedi sympathizers, just like in Episode 3. So they kind of feel like they're kind of like just going around and around with some of the storyline. This kind of pacing issue pops up on a couple of other occasions in Obi-Wan Kenobi. It feels at times like the writers were scared of the audience getting bored. I don't think that would happen because of the nostalgia aspect of this series itself. If anything, The Mandalorian showed that people were interested in this Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. Okay, back to the best. Moses Ingram. This is the woman who plays Sister Riva, third Sister Riva. So they definitely liked her. And I thought she did pretty well.
I thought she did great, but she was getting a lot of hate so much on Twitter that Ewan McGregor actually took to his Twitter and basically said, if you are a hater of Moses Ingram and you're complaining about her because of her race, then you're not a true Star Wars fan. And I don't even know how her race got brought into anything, because in Star Wars, everybody is from different planets. You're all aliens. So why would her being African American be an issue? Like, well, I thought she was okay.
No, I did too.
I did too. I thought she was a badass.
Right. The interesting thing about it is you had the trio of Inquisitors, and she was probably the one that was the most interesting of all three of them. Like, the other two guys had interesting looks. Now, Riva is just your typical black one, but she, as they say here, her icy persona and violent tendencies harken back to Asajj Ventress in the Clone Wars. I don't remember which character that was, but she had almost like Maul. She had a dual. Like, she could take one end off and not do two. She can do either a sword,
and it had like
the spikes.
Yeah.
So her look and her fighting style was good. And the thing that people, they jumped on her ass pretty early. But I think that if you're somebody who was doubting her character early, even if it wasn't about race, if you were doubting her character, stick with it, because there's a twist to her that no one knew about and we didn't even know about. And I thought that was interesting coming down the line, which was cool. But then again, Vader's there and he knows some certain things. So
because he knows he's Vader.
Those are some cool moments. So they liked her. And now worst, this is coming back a little bit to our the part where like there's filler. So they have worse here, sloppy writing. I think a lot of people I've heard that critique this series have said the writing isn't that strong. So that could be partly because of the whole filler stuff the regurgitation throughout the series.
But everything in Star Wars is a regurgitation. Like
Force Awakens.
Right? I mean,
it's almost a duplicate of A New Hope.
So let's just look at everything that has happened since the 70s. And I know a lot of I'm a fan, but I'm not an Uber fan, and a lot of Uber fans have read like the paperbacks, they've read the comic books, they've seen a lot of people's off-screen stories, and I think that's why they kind of throw that out there, like, oh, it's poor writing, it's weak writing. I didn't really think it was that weak, because I'm gonna be blunt. If I don't think something is interesting, I will fall asleep. DJ Anubis has seen it in person. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the end of the Batman. I cannot I don't know if it's just me or whatever, but I could be completely, it could be 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm watching something and if I don't think it's great, I will fall asleep. I watched all of this completely awake and enjoyed all of this. I think sometimes people kind of say it's weak writing because they're kind of going the kid angle, maybe. But
well, here's
what would you do?
Well, this is what they say, and this is just part of it. Why does Bail Organa send Obi-Wan a physical transmission revealing Anakin's children and their locations? How does Riva survive her fight with Vader and get to Tatooine so quickly? And above all...
But because he purposely didn't kill her, he said that to her. He's like, what is more painful than dying? So he did not want to kill her.
Why? Yeah, I think is like he did stab her with the saber.
He stabbed her.
So,
but he said that to her. He's like, what is more painful than dying? He didn't want to kill her. He wanted her to be wounded and feel guilty that she could not take, her plan to fruition.
Right, and I guess the other thing is, too, people say, well, she was impaled with a saber, and I'm like, well, you have to understand, sabers also heat. So even when, like, Luke lost his hand, it probably automatically sealed up.
Because, cauterized
it. Exactly.
And also, it also depends on what, like, it was up by her ribs.
Right.
Like, there's shit there, but it could have missed every, main organ, main artery or whatever. And I remember that quote from Vader basically saying, this will be more painful this way. Because that's what Vader wanted. He wanted her to witness her failure. And...
Well, speaking of Vader, he's another one of the best of the series. And as we mentioned, Hayden Christensen coming back.
I'm so happy
I've actually seen a couple of interviews with him. He did one with Fallon not too long ago. Really fun. I'm really glad to see that guy with a smile on his face because he took a lot of shit when he shouldn't have back in the day. They say, do you like Darth Vader? Of course you do. At this point, he's probably the most unifying part of the entire Star Wars franchise. Which is true. Like, I've even heard people say, who's the greatest villain of all time? Guess who pops up? Darth Vader. And the coolest thing about this, too, for those that have not watched it yet, is the voice is, again, being done by James Earl Jones. So it's not just that Christensen's portraying the body of Darth Vader, but the voice is also still James Earl Jones from back in the day as well. So I love that. Staying consistent. The combo of James Earl Jones and Hayden Christensen works really well here, and it allows for an oscillation between the Vader persona and Anakin himself. The scene in Episode 6 where Obi-Wan slashes through Vader's helmet and the two actors' voices muddling together.
Oh, I know. That was really, really, really good.
Is particularly effective, yeah. So really, like we said, Vader in this series is still a very young Vader, so whereas he's a little more controlled when you watch the New Hope and the movies that follow, like Empire, he's like more experienced and a vet. He's learned to control his anger a little bit more to the point where he knows what he's doing with his force. Whereas now, he's just almost uncontrollable. Like he's everyone fears him for reasons, obviously, which is funny because I think back to what was it? Was it A New Hope where one of the generals was saying to Vader, "You're outdated or something, and you don't scare me with your sorcery names." I'm choking a dude. Yeah. So I think that's a very cool. Like, you don't think about it initially watching the series, but when I think about it now, at this point in Vader's life, being the right-hand man to the Emperor, he's so out of control in terms of anger that, like, nobody wants to cross this guy. Nobody. And, but as time goes on, and the Force, there's not much Jedi left, because we know that Luke ends up becoming one, but there's just not much of anything. Even Vader himself is sort of like a dying breed, because he's the dark side, but it's just him and the Emperor. There's really no other ones. So when those guys in his staff, like the generals, start talking shit, they have no idea about the old school ways of the Force, so Vader has to teach him a lesson. It's like, oh, really?
Bunch of Force choking.
Right. Whereas this one, Vader's still using the Force, but everyone's still kind of aware about Jedis and the Force and everything else.
You know what? You just made a very astute observation, because I've heard other people kind of criticize this series because they felt like it was too over the top, like with the Force, like the Force choking, the Force throwing and stuff. And yes, we love seeing stuff like that. We love seeing the Force being used. We love seeing people throwing rocks with the Force. But what you just said makes so much sense when you rewind and think of, so this is Vader, maybe nine years after what happened to him. When you look at the first Star Wars, that is 19 years after what happened to him. So this series, you are getting him being like, I'm after Obi-Wan. Fuck Obi-Wan. And then they had that big fight.
Right.
And that might have been what kind of put him back in perspective when you look at the original Star Wars and you look at the kind of fighting that he did, and the Force choking and the use of the Force, it was more subdued. Mainly,
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Exactly. He kept it a little bit more under the radar because he knew what he could do, and he was angry, and clearly he knew what was happening out there, but he was trying to be, this is the first Star Wars, what I'm speaking of. He was trying to be more strategic.
Right.
But right now, in the Obi-Wan series, he's more raw and emotional.
Right.
So
because he's actually still very much looking for Obi-Wan. Like, it's...
Because he's blaming Obi-Wan for the death of Padme.
Right.
And, like, what the fuck is going on, and...
But again, with the atmosphere of it all is that people have to understand is without the Jedi, you don't have the Sith Lords. Like, that's... The Jedis are actually the key to what happens. So basically, every Jedi that ever was, unless it was someone who was personally trained by the Emperor, well, even though Vader was too, but one thing that the Emperor has always said is that, you are a Jedi, but there are other parts of the Force that would, like, embolden or make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of where the trap becomes. But then, like, when the Emperor says, I want you to go to the Jedi Temple and destroy and kill all the Jedi, like, the Emperor's just kind of like cutting out half of the line. Like, he's like, I only want you and me to be Jedis, or whatever you want to call them, Sith Lords, and therefore I want you to kill out the rest of us. So,
because he was like, oh, the dark side can save Padme from
right,
dying.
Right.
And that's all that, what's his face? Not, what was his name? Anakin?
Who? You talking about Vader?
Yeah.
Anakin.
Thank you. That's all that Anakin in that movie cared about, because he was so easily persuaded, because he was so concerned about the love of his life. And
because of what happened to his mom, he couldn't save her, so that played a part
exactly.
into it.
So,
and the Emperor knew that. Like, the Emperor knew what his weaknesses were and used that against him.
So he's using that and saying, listen, the dark side can save people from dying, and that might, you might want to use that if you don't want to see Padme die. So, I don't know. What's the next?
So the next worst one is Trapped by the Past. So they say, there was once a time when the 2 decades between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope were largely unexplored. These days, though, that's no longer the case. Between series like movies like Rogue One and Solo, as well as Obi-Wan Kenobi, they tried to squeeze in yet another arc into that time frame, and it frequently bumps its head on the ceiling. Simply put, it's hard to give stakes to a story when the main character's fates are all known. Okay, but we did that with Black Widow. We know exactly what happens, and we still watch it. So I don't think that really is a big issue for me there. In fact, a lot of people find genuine curiosity about what happens between then and then, because really, I don't know about you, but when I first watched Star Wars at age 7 in the theaters, the whole talk about Obi-Wan, I'm like, well, who the fuck is he? Yeah, okay, he's some old dude.
Why is he so special? Yeah.
Right, so I have no backstory at that point about Obi-Wan. When the prequels came out, they gave you all the backstory, and now we have kind of like the middle of what's going on.
And this is even like, because that's why, you remember the "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope."
Yeah.
You know,
which now
makes
fits
sense.
well with Leia, because at first you don't even know how she fucking knows Ben Kenobi. So there's a lot in there that this is working for, and so I don't agree with them on that. I think that you have to kind of have some of that filler if you're going to make anything interesting. Like, they tried to expand on Star Wars by doing the new trilogy, and it didn't really turn out well. Some people like them, most people don't.
I mean, I know they're corny, but I still kind of like them.
I don't really like them per se. I mean, obviously, I think
I like them more than the sequels, the ones that they did with Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, the ones that they did recently. Like, I like episodes 1, 2, and 3 more than I like episodes 7, 8, 9.
that's what I was talking about. The last 3 are the ones that are really a problem for me. So you have basically New Hope through
Episodes 4, 5, and 6 are the OG.
Right.
Episodes 1, 2, and 3
Prequels.
are the prequels. And I know a lot of people don't like them.
No, I like those.
I did too.
I actually appreciated the first 2 more now. Revenge of the Sith was my favorite of the 3, but over time, the first 2 have become, look, everyone hates that fucking mouthy little thing, but
Jar Jar?
yeah, but he's really kind of like, he's pretty much done after the first movie, so you're good. I mean, Attack of the Clones is pretty cool. There's some really good fights in there. I thought...
There's good fights in
3.
Holy
Christopher
shit.
Lee as Dooku, that was fucking great.
So I really did like the prequels, but 7, 8, 9, the ones that they did recently.
Right, and those are the ones I have problems with.
So those...
I mean, Force Awakens gets somewhat of a pass for me because Solo's in there, but, again...
I think that's the only one I actually watched the whole way through, because I kind of liked it.
Well, yeah, the only thing I just, like I said, it reminds me too much of A New Hope, the way that it was written.
Mm-hmm.
They were playing it safe. And then they got crazy with the other 2, and it's like, okay, so back to the best.
Okay.
A darker Star Wars story. So that makes sense. I mean,
it does make sense, because this is where Anakin is really, like, balls deep in the dark side. Think about it. Uh-oh. Well, I saw your face. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm trying to skip through this a little bit because we gotta get moving. But worse is lack of style.
No.
Nah.
Next.
Best fan service, yes.
Yes.
Got Christian back.
I really... You were telling me about a video you watched. Somebody must have recorded it while they were on the set. And Hayden came in. And he was getting ready for makeup and costume, and they were, like, cheering for him. And I think that just proves that they want him to be Darth Vader. Like, they being, like, the world is accepting that he is Darth Vader, and,
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand when the prequels came out, there's this sense of... You have to understand, Hayden really wasn't like a seasoned actor when he did that first prequels, and so there's some rough edges there. And so, obviously, some of his emotion probably wasn't the way that most people were hoping it would be. So I kind of get that. But to me, it was never like, you don't need to shit on a guy who really... He just wanted to do a role. He wasn't trying to, like, piss people off. So it's like... The amount of hate that he got drove him out of the industry. Like,
he stopped acting.
Right.
The part at the end of episode 3, when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting, and he's like,
by then he was pretty fucking good.
Mhm.
That, like, the character had transformed a lot at that point. So yeah, by the time Sith came out, I was like, he's pretty fucking good in this. Like, I feel it between him and Ewan McGregor.
that whole fight, and Obi-Wan is like, beating the shit out of Anakin, and he's like, you were the chosen one. You were like a brother to me. And he was just like hurt. And then you see Anakin kind of realizing, like, yeah, I was like a brother to you. But because he had been turned, and he was so upset because he kept having bad dreams about Padme dying, that was like what...
Which probably could have been fed from the Emperor if he
Mhm.
has that kind of power. So,
And what was really interesting too is that this series, he just kept like feeding his power. Like, he was feeding power off of everybody. And like we were talking about the third sister, she just wanted to get close to Vader, and we're not going to give you any spoilers, but there's a reason she wanted to get close to Vader. It's just I thought that, and that the throwback to what happened in the first three, it was like a good filler. They say there's too much filler, but that was like a good kind of like I don't know what the word is, but like it really kind of gave you the information you needed to understand, like, his character, his emotions.
I'm gonna get to one more of the worst, and
Okay.
then but this one I think you and I are gonna really disagree
Oh no.
with. So, worst, Leia isn't a real character. So I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna break down my opinion on it. For as good as Vivian LeBlair is as Leia Organa, the character suffers from writing that treats her more like an Easter egg than a person. She's only 9, yet she carries herself with the confidence and discernment of a seasoned general. Obviously, Leia is an impressive person in Star Wars universe, and shows writers clearly want to treat both her and Carrie Fisher's legacy with respect. But wouldn't it be more respectful to make young Leia a real character? Even when she's being interrogated in the Imperial prison, Leia never breaks. A 9-year-old girl who believes that her only friend in the galaxy is dead is in prison literally designed to break Jedi. It would be interesting if Leia broke at times. It would give Obi-Wan a chance to console her and step up as the adult in the room. But no, she never breaks, and she never gets that opportunity.
This is bullshit.
This wouldn't matter so much if Leia weren't such a massive part of the story. Most of Obi-Wan's scenes are related to her in some way, and a lot of the dialogue is spoken directly to her. But she doesn't have a real arc. It often feels awkward when it should feel cute. I agree with you. It's bullshit because you learn very fast with A New Hope that Leia is a no bullshitter. Very strong woman. Even when Alderaan was blown to bits, she was upset, but she wasn't like breaking down like a weepy woman. In fact, it just made her more angry. So watching Blair's portrayal of Leia makes sense. And it's weird because we haven't had a chance to see Luke yet as a kid, but her playing Leia matches up with Leia with Carrie Fisher. And Leia here is showing again she's a rebel.
I'm saying this is bullshit because remember in the series where she got upset with Obi-Wan
And ran.
So there are reasons of her saying like, oh no, she's just like filler. No, she was not sure if she could trust him, and she followed her instincts. It wasn't like she was Obi-Wan's lapdog or whatever. It was when they were on that weird planet with all the, and they didn't think they would be able to get off.
Right.
And she saw Obi-Wan fighting, and she got scared and didn't.
Yeah, she
believe.
showed fear when she needed to. But I think that, again, like I think back to Fisher when she was playing Leia, that she was just a no bullshitter when Luke first comes in this trooper suit. She's just kind of like, well, who are you? You know,
You're awful short to be a stormtrooper.
Right. So this matches up to me perfectly. Like she's rebellious, and unlike Luke, who, whether she's rebellious because she grew up kind of spoiled a little bit because of who she's with, might have been a part of that. But her parents, step-parents, taught her that she needed to be a strong, because she was going to be the next in line.
Yeah, she was next in line to take over for her dad.
Right. So on the other end of the spectrum, Luke is basically a laborer with his uncle on a farm, and so he doesn't have much experience with like leadership and all this other stuff. He's still a dreamer, and which happens with Mark Hamill when we finally see him, in his movies.
And that shows like both sides are great for rebellion. You've got Leia, who has been born and bred into this entire like leadership movement, and Luke, who he has no idea what's going on out in the galaxy, but he's like, I don't agree with this, so I'm gonna make it better. And then, as we see in the first Star Wars, when the one person, Obi-Wan, that he follows, dies, he's like, God damn it, son of a bitch, I'm in. And he, Luke, he went on this journey with, his family was killed, and he had nothing left. So all he wanted to do was just, make things better. And it like you said, like a dreamer, like he...
Yeah, because he always wanted to be a Jedi.
Yeah, all he had was his ideology, and he and Obi-Wan, old Ben.
But you can see, like, with him, there was hesitancy all the time. Like, it took him longer to catch on to stuff. Leia, who, even though she didn't know she had the Force until later...
she didn't think it was the Force. She thought it was just, like, intuition.
Right, and she's always been a strong character, like, for everybody. And so, like...
I think we all
as
agree
a kid,
Princess Leia was the strong character.
She was. Out of the kids, she was probably the strongest one.
She fucking choked Jabba the Hutt. I mean, like...
Right. So, I mean, like, do I expect her as a kid to be rebellious like that and push back? Yeah, I do. There are some snotty fucking kids out there. But the difference is, she isn't snotty in so much a bad way. She just doesn't trust the world. She doesn't... Clearly, when she ran from Obi-Wan, she's like, why are they looking for you? Because she has no idea who this guy is.
And she was acting like what a kid would be. She was scared. So that's why she's like, fuck you. You're trying to kidnap me too, because I just got kidnapped. Right. So what do you want with me?
Yeah, if there's any kind of... I have to understand how Vader's looking or trying to find him, because, like...
Vader doesn't know at
right.
this point. He doesn't know.
But you remember they mentioned that somebody, the mother of Leia, had sent a transmission to Obi-Wan about the kids. Probably didn't name by name, but...
But she sent that to the third sister.
Right. So my only thing is, like, one thing Vader was always very good at is sensing the Force. So either Leia just had never known about it, so it was never coming out, and that's why he couldn't pick up on it. That might be it, but the same thing with Luke too. I mean, they didn't.
That's why they split them up and hid them.
It wasn't until Luke's trying to destroy the Death Star that Vader's like, yeah, the Force is strong with this one, So, yeah. So we highly recommend this series. Okay,
yeah, we're big Star Wars nerds. If you didn't get that,
right. All right, let's get back into our music. This block we have some brand new stuff from Disma. As I mentioned earlier, Werewolves, fucking great album, and a new Phobia from Metal Message. But here's some Disma with Earthianum.